Welcome everybody to this August Planning Decisions Committee meeting of Yarra Council. We acknowledge the owners and true sovereigns of the land now known as Yarra. We acknowledge their creative spirit Bunjil, their ancestors and their elders. We also acknowledge the strength and resilience of the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung, who have never ceded sovereignty and retained their strong connections to acts of European invasion. We also acknowledge the significant contributions made by other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to life in Yarra. We pay our and to their elders past, present and future. We've got all the relevant officers here tonight. All councillors, with the exception of Councillor Davies, apologies from him, and who's on long-term leave of absence. Councillors, I'm going to ask you a question. Just respond, I do, unless you do have a conflict of interest. Councillor... I do. Councillor Aston.
Wait, do you want to ask the question? Do you have to for them?
I will ask the question. That is a very good call. Do you declare that you've familiarised yourself with the matters being presented to this meeting and that you do not have a conflict of interest?
I do.
Councillor Aston?
I do.
Councillor Gomez?
I do.
Councillor Harrison?
I do.
Councillor Ho?
I do.
Councillor Wade?
I do.
And myself, I do. Minutes of the last meeting, I think we're all here. Can I get one of you to move the minutes of the last PDC meeting? Nobody? Councillor, seconded by Councillor Aston. Anyone to speak to that? No. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those minutes are passed unanimously. We move on. We've got 3 business reports tonight for those of you who haven't been before. It's where there's a controversy. So we'll start off by hearing from the relevant officers. Their take on the application. They're going to speak to their report that you would have all read. Then we'll hear from the applicant and or their representatives. And finally, we'll hear from the objectors. And I think many of you have been here before, but those of you who don't, we can only do one of 3 things. We can either support the officer recommendation in totality with no changes. We can reject the officer recommendation in totality, and then presumably it'll go off to VCAT for a final decision. Or thirdly, we can approve the officer recommendation, but with extra changes, which often is what happens. In fact, most times that's what happens. So if you're here as an applicant or a rep for the applicant or as an objector, we really need to know exactly what you're asking us to do. The analogy I always say, it's like if you go to a restaurant, you don't just tell the person that you're hungry, you tell them exactly what you want to eat. So we really need to hear from you, not how great or how bad this application is, but exactly how, if any, changes you want to the officer recommendation. So the first one up is 169171 Victoria Parade in my beautiful ward of Fitzroy. Officers, we're going to take the report as read. Are there any questions to offer? Did you want to give a brief report? You don't really need to. Councillor Gomez is asking for. Are you asking for a report? No. Anybody asking for a report? Okay. Any questions at this stage? You will get another shot to ask the officers questions. No. Okay. Well, we'll move on to the applicant. If you're the applicant for this matter or their representative, can you please come up to the front, press the button, introduce yourself, and you'll have 5 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. My name's Vaughan Connor. I'm a town planner at Contour Consultants, and tonight I represent the Crawford Group, who are the permit applicant. Look, regarding the proposal which is before Council tonight, we generally support the recommendation. However, we will address the Council in relation to Condition 2 within the recommendation a bit later on. Before doing so, on the merits side of this application, it's important to note that the application has been amended from the original submission. The originally lodged proposal included 2 additional levels above the existing office building, the existing 5-storey concrete block office building, and it also included the George Street site and 2 dwellings, and it maintained car parking for the Victoria Parade site. Fair to say that when this application was advertised, the original application, there was a significant reaction, and in relation or in response to this, to the reaction and the number of objections, the client was prepared to make some significant concessions. And those concessions related largely to removing what was proposed for the George Street site, and secondly, removing the 2 office levels above, or the proposed office levels above the rear office building on the Victoria Parade site. Also fair to say is that a common theme within the objections which were received was overdevelopment and height associated with the 2 extra levels. So the amendments were central to, or went to that point of overdevelopment and were a deliberate response to the objections received. So now what's before council is effectively a refurbishment of the existing buildings to deliver a boutique office development. As an inspection of the site would reveal, both the Vic Parade terraces and the rear building are in poor condition and works need to be done to improve their amenity. To this end, and given the available car parking on the George Street site, there is good leasing interest from the allied health sector associated with the hospital presence in East Melbourne. So there's strong leasing interest for a whole range of reasons. The terrace houses, the newly refurbished building, but also the available car parking. Turning to condition 2, some recent discussions with the officers have found a way forward through a separate process. Our concern was to remove those windows from that west elevation would have an impact on the future amenity of those office floors, and we're trying to get as much natural light into those floors as possible. But there's and I think that's understood by the officers. There's just a technical consideration associated with windows on boundaries. But we think we've got a way forward. So rather than make a submission which requests a change to the wording of that condition, we will reluctantly accept that condition and use a separate process to come back and deal with the technical considerations. And I thank the officers for the late engagement on that. But otherwise, it is simply a refurbishment of those buildings. There are no unreasonable town planning consequences. As the report spells out, there's strong policy support, etc., etc. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions from councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaughan. We'll just listen to the objectors first, and if they're any here, and then we'll come back to questions to yourself. Is there anyone else who wants to speak for the applicant or on behalf of the applicant? No? Are there any objectors to this matter that would like to speak? Mr. Spencer, please come to the front, press the button, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't think I'll need 5 minutes. Firstly, thank you for your attention to this issue as the ward councillor. I think all the local residents appreciated your availability and willingness to consult with the residents, and clearly the outcome is one that is much better than what we were originally facing when you first came one sunny morning in January, I think it was. I would like to make just 3 points, and it won't take 5 minutes. The first point is that this has been an outrageous waste of money, that this issue could have been solved months ago if the proponent had consulted local residents. We heard nothing. We saw drones going up to inspect the building. We were told, oh, they're just checking the wall of the building to make sure it's secure. The residents were always willing and able to engage in consultation on this issue, and it could have been solved months ago, saving mountains of money. Every day in the media, we're assaulted with claims that residents are costing the development industry money. That is not true. Developers are costing themselves money because they want to take on residents and try to bully and bulldoze propositions that are outrageously out of line with the town planning requirements because they've got the money. They should be spending the money on other things, including affordable housing, of which there's a serious shortage. The other thing I'd like to say is a warning to particularly the number of new councillors here. I probably haven't been this close to a development application simply because it is effectively in my backyard, compared to a number of others where I've had a more academic interest. What strikes me about these processes is that consultants are no longer independent experts. They're simply spin doctors. The content of the consultant's report should have been written by a Mills and Boon copywriter for all the relationship they had to the important facts of the matter. So I would warn you all, councillors, just beware of reading these reports and treat them all sceptically. They're essentially doing whatever the proponent asks for. Sorry, I can see you whispering and wondering whether I'm making derogatory comments, which I'm not.
You're getting very, very close to it, and I don't want to have to call you up, but if you can just keep away from the adjectives and just stick to the points that you're trying to make, that'd be very helpful, please.
Yeah, but it's simply a lesson that I've learnt that I just want to share with councillors, that you need to treat these consultants' reports very sceptically. You know, there was a claim in the architectural drawings, for example, that these 2 extra stories and everything were necessary in order to protect the heritage components of the building. Clearly not true, based on what we're hearing tonight. There was comments in the heritage report that glossed over the events of the early 1970s when these buildings were a focal point for protection of heritage in this area, when the Housing Commission was knocking down whole blocks, and these buildings here, this row of terraces, became the last stand. And if you go through the clippings, you'll see a photograph of the Premier at the time and the President of the National Trust standing out the front saying, "This is enough, now is the time for heritage protection in Melbourne." So they're very significant, but all that was glossed over. There was a random fire in the buildings and therefore the whole interior was destroyed. The fact is the buildings were left open for vandals, and this was the way things happened in the 70s. Many of you may not remember this, but buildings were simply left open for vandals to come and destroy them where there was a potential of a protection issue arising. So we need to just treat all this stuff very sceptically. And the final point is simply to say that unfortunately, because of this whole experience...
30 seconds.
There's now not a lot of trust here. So I would say to the officers to please not assume goodwill on the part of the developer here. We are very concerned about potential asbestos and other dust flying into neighbouring properties. Please make sure that, particularly when it comes to building permits, that everything is followed by the book. Because unfortunately, trust has evaporated through this process.
Thank you. Your time has run out.
Thanks, Mayor.
Mr. Spencer, thank you for your contribution. Are there any other objectors here tonight that want to speak? No. Councillors, have you got any questions to... sorry, you don't get a second shot, unless somebody asks you a question. Okay, I'll ask you a question. Would you like to respond to that comment? Come to the front, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did reach out to the Fitzroy Residents Association seeking a meeting when we amended the proposal, and there was no response.
Thank you for that contribution. All right, officers, councillors, are there any questions to officers, the applicant's representative, or Mr. Spencer? First of all, Councillor Gomez.
I've got a question to the officers. So, page 36, note 108, there was some discussion around the parking access in the rear, with the fact that the swept paths indicate that the incursion onto private property or somebody else's property. Could you just elaborate on that for the purposes of the meeting?
Through you, Mayor. An existing condition of this site is that 3 car spaces at the rear of the building do encroach slightly on private property in order to access the internal garages. That is an existing condition. It has been occurring for the past 50 years since the building was constructed. That is not changing. It is not a planning issue. We can't force any changes given the limited amount of works that are happening within that boundary. So it is a civil issue that could be taken further.
And just to follow up from me, we're talking about 5 cars, roughly here.
3 that use that laneway.
Yeah, it's a tiny number, yeah. Councillor Harrison.
Just following up with Mr. Spencer's comment about fears about asbestos, Are you satisfied that there is appropriate construction management plan in place or will be in place to deal with those things? Because I have residents in my ward who talk about people arriving in hazmat suits, and it concerns residents a great deal when they see that and they have no idea what's going on.
Through you, Mayor, yes, there is a standard condition that would be placed on the permit for a construction management plan, a detailed construction management plan that would.
Through you, Mayor, just to clarify, the asbestos removal is actually not a planning consideration. It is actually an EPA thing, or it might be a building permit issue, neither of which we would actually control.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Thank you, officers. Any other questions? I've got a suggested way forward. Councillor Wade?
Yeah, sorry, I just feel like I need to clarify or straighten out the kind of integrity allegations that were just made. Are we confident? I wasn't entirely sure if it was alleged that the consultants for the applicant were being biased or that consultants for us were being biased, but are we confident that any advice that is in this report that we've received is accurate and independent? And sorry, that might be for Ms Osman.
Ms Osman's going to take up that, the General Manager of this area.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Wade. I'm assuming the comments were directed toward the permit applicant. We have worked with the permit applicant before. This isn't a process where I will be, questioning the integrity of anybody who's been involved in this process. The planning permit application was lodged in good faith. An assessment has been made on that application and a recommendation has been put forward to Council this evening. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I will suggest a way forward, and if there's a seconder, I'll move to it, which is to effectively support the officer recommendation in totality with an extra H, like so. After 1G, there would be a 1H, which says the westernmost row of south-facing windows screened with obscure glazing, maximum 25% transparency to a height of 1.7 metres above finished floor level at levels 1 to 4. Is there a seconder for that? No? Oh, Councillor Gomez. Thank you. Okay, well, I'll speak to this.
Sorry, Councillor Jolly, can I ask a question about this?
Of course.
To officers, if that's okay. My apologies. I just was wondering if you could just speak to this and if you have any concerns about this or what this would actually mean in practice.
Through you, Mayor, there are some south-facing windows at all levels that are going to be increasing in height. I think at the moment they're just highlight windows, so there is the possibility there may be some overlooking to a dwelling to the south. So there's one row that on the westernmost side of the building. If we screen that, then it would obscure views.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry, and so this is screening the westernmost row of south-facing windows with obscure glazing to a height of 1.7 above the finished. Does that mean every single window would be glazed up on that side? I'm just trying to practically understand what it looks like. Correct. And would that be concerning for the occupants of the building in any way?
It would still leave a significant amount of glazing, south-facing glazing, that's not affected. So it's just one row. There's a central row and there's an easternmost row that would not be affected. In terms of the obscure glazing, it would still allow daylight to access.
Okay. So did you have any more questions? Sorry, Councillor. Okay, so in speaking to this, when you have a new development in Victoria Parade, next to probably the best organised residents in the whole of the city of Yarra, you're walking into to the rumble in the jungle. That's clear. But I have to say, as ward councillor, that the attitude of this applicant and their representative and the attitudes that collectively have come from the residents have been right from the start cooperative. We all know we have to increase housing stock in the area. We know what our targets are. We know it's difficult, but we have, as even Mr. Spencer admitted, come a long, long way from the original application, which was 7 stories. I've never seen such a reduction in terms of the amended application to what it was originally. It's essentially, I think Vaughan used the expression, it's like basically a refurb now. I've only got that small amendment to it, which I think will protect the residents even more. And this amendment has come from the residents. I am sympathetic to what the applicants are asking for in terms of the windows on the west. probably would have been better to put that in the application rather than raising it tonight. But be that as it may, you know, it seems like we've got a solution or a way forward for that, which is good, and we can get on with this application. I just think that as a council, when you have an application that's essentially a refurb, if we were to reject this, well, then we basically wouldn't have any housing stock being developed in the city of Yarra. I think it's a very modest proposal, and on that basis, I hope it's passed unanimously. Councillor Gomez in seconding.
Nothing more to add other than I have a lot of time for Michael Spencer as the member of the Fitzroy Residents Association, so I listened to what he says with great intent. But I echo Mayor Jolly's comments that it seems like this application has gone through a long journey, through a long series of discussions with the residents, as well as to try and come up with a solution that made sense for everyone, including a fairly major redesign from the original proposal. So I endorse this motion to my fellow councillors.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? Okay, sorry, Councillor Wade.
I will. As a general rule, I don't love obscure glazing, especially to that kind of level, just because I think, you know, people have the right in their workplace or at home to see out their windows, and I don't love it, but noting that there will still be daylight coming in, I think it's a reasonable enough compromise that I'm going to vote for it, but just a kind of putting out into the world that that this doesn't mean no losses to people who have to work there every day.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else like to speak? I will not exercise my right of reply, so we'll go straight to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. That is passed unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Officers, can you just explain to the meeting what happens from here on in?
Council will issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit that will be available for objectors to appeal at VCAT for 28 days or for the applicant to appeal any conditions for 60 days.
Thank you. We'll move along to 502 732 734 Heidelberg Road, Alphington. Councillors, I'm going to take the report as read. We'll have questions if you've got any for the officers, but we might just wait until we've heard from the applicant and any objectors here tonight. So if you're here as the applicant or a representative of the applicant, can you please come to the front, press the button, introduce yourself, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Good evening, councillors. My name's Hugh Gerard. I'm a planning consultant from Glossop Town Planning, representing obviously the permit applicant here tonight. We support the recommendation of council officers to grant the permit as it's written, and therefore I'm only going to add a few brief comments in relation to some of the issues that have been mentioned in the report. First thing that I wanted to mention was that the proposal has had regard to both the existing and proposed DDO 18 that's intended to apply to the site. This isn't a... Sorry. Sorry. I don't think I'll take it anyway, but thank you. This isn't a proposal which we think is seeking to push the envelope in any respect in terms of the built form that's proposed. This is an area where you can have a height of up to 17.6 metres and we're just below 10 metres. So we're well within the preferred building height. Within the report, you'll see from the referral responses, Council's urban designer raised some concerns. They've been addressed through conditions which we accept, and we accepted them prior to the report being written. So they've been addressed. The strategic planners raised a concern about the setback from Townhouse 4 to number 6 Killip Street. We're largely set back in accordance with standard B17, as it then was. And the greatest variation I've got here that was identified by the council officers is 230 mils to that interface. From context, under DDO 18, you could have an 8 metre high boundary wall constructed up against that interface. So we think that a 230 mil variation to the B17 envelope, which is obviously set back a lot more, is certainly reasonable in the context. We otherwise agree with the analysis that was made by the council officers in relation to matters such as equitable development of neighbouring properties. The proposal won't diminish that potential. In terms of the objections that were received by council, Again, there were a number of objections which talked about overdevelopment or strategic support. Again, we say this is at the lower end of what development could be potentially permitted on the site. Overlooking has been addressed or would be further addressed through conditions. We don't have any unreasonable overshadowing, and council's engineers were happy with the road and waste collection issues. The final point that I wanted to mention is we think that it is a benefit that we are retaining the commercial shops to the front facing Heidelberg Road, which we understand council is seeking to have heritage listed through Amendment C273. So really that's all I wanted to say tonight. I just wanted to re-emphasise that we think this is not a proposal that's pushing the bounds in any shape or form in terms of reasonableness, and we say it has a lot of credit going for it. Happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherrod. We've got two objectors here tonight, I think. Sally Tonkin, if you're here, can you please come up to the front and speak? You've got 5 minutes from the minute you start talking. Followed by Penny Jackson.
Thank you. Thank you. My name's Sally Tonkin. I live at 3 Park Avenue, Alphington. Our home is next door to the private car park owned by the Sisters of Mercy, which is to the south of the roadway or the laneway into the proposal. I'm here tonight. I've got a really simple request. It's based on really supporting my neighbours to request a reduction of the proposal from 4 apartments to 3. I believe this would allow for some more green space, tree planting at the south end of the proposed development in keeping with the surrounding homes, and particularly to Penny's home at 6 Killip Street. I think that would provide a bit of less intrusion into those properties, and particularly the property at 730A Heidelberg Road. I know that this is a commercial property, but it is a home, and sadly those people have sold their home in view of this proposed development, which I think is really sad. They loved living in Alphington. So really, that's really what I've come to say, just to support my neighbours, and hopefully, you know, I understand, I've looked at all the plans, I've tried to read everything in the plans as best I can, and I know we need development, but I think Alphington's got, that little pocket of Alphington has got a lot of development happening there, a lot. Thanks.
Thank you. Penny Jackson.
Oops. Hi, I'm living at 6 Killip Street, and the proposed development borders on the east, or my west side of the backyard mostly of 6 Killip Street. I'm actually quite appreciative of some of the measures that the council has put forward and included in the report regarding interface and rear setback, building separation and amenity and landscaping, although not nearly enough, as Sally has mentioned. But as long as they are followed through on, and I see them as a minimum requirement. Having read the report, there's a couple of things I've noted that one was page 109, building separation requirement, item 77, where it says, while council's strategic planning limit has requested upper level setbacks in accordance with DD 015 building separation requirements, this interface is to a site outside the overlay and within the neighbourhood zone, where there's no opportunity for opposing...
Sorry to interrupt for a minute. Sorry, can the people at the back, please, at the very back, please stop talking, or maybe take your conversation? It's spreading a lot up here. Thank you. We stopped the clock. You can continue, Penny.
Okay. while the council's strategic planning unit has requested upper level setbacks of, it doesn't really matter how much, in accordance with DD 018 building with separation requirements, this interface is to a site outside the overlay and within the neighbourhood zone where there is no opportunity for opposing medium to high density development. And the other clause was page 173. Given the scale of development anticipated under DD 018, some additional overshadowing is expected. The objective of clause 55045 is the discretionary requirement within the DD 018, unlike in residential zones where it is a mandatory requirement. As such, development that causes significant overshadowing to existing secluded private space may be contemplated. So it appears that for future development that any people, any residences along the precinct, Heidelberg Road precincts will have this disadvantage of firstly not being able to oppose development or high density development, and the proposed development has the advantage of using discretionary requirements rather than mandatory requirements for overshadowing. Overshadowing. And I'm wondering in the future with future development at 6 Killip Street, at the rear of 6 Killip Street, 6 Killip Street is at a disadvantage of having both the eastern and northern borders bordering on precinct 3B. If the rear of the 6 Killip Street is there's a development there, and not being a heritage listed block, unlike the one next to the other side, which is under consideration, as well as all the other residences along precinct bordering on this precinct and other precincts along Heidelberg Road, with the potential of 17.5 building height on short blocks and with the built form framework modelling, will they not be overwhelmed by these buildings in all aspects of privacy and overshadowing? That's all I've got to say, sorry.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions to officers, the applicant, or to either of the two objectors at this stage? Deputy Mayor Mackenzie, a question to the officers. If the officers could come to the front, please. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I'm just wondering, just picking up on that point about the strategic planning unit's recommendations. I know that we've sort of had a bit of back and forth about this today, so thank you for that. But could you just explain to me if we increase those setbacks as per what the strategic planning unit had recommended in the report, what would be the consequence of that? What would be the outcome of it?
Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Firstly, if I could just speak to the intent of the DDO 18, the controls there is really envisioned for apartment developments. What we have in front of us is a series of townhouses, and hence why consideration has been made against the Clause 55 risk code assessments, which officers believe are on balance provides a stricter assessment and more appropriate to townhouse typologies. In terms of the setbacks that has been suggested by the strategic planning unit, being set back 3 metres and 4.5 metres from the eastern boundary, would basically result in the deletion of townhouse 4.
Thank you. Any other questions at this stage? I'm looking at Councillor Gomez.
So basically a flip side to Councillor Mackenzie's question. So can you explain how, I think, Standard B17 and the conditions that you're recommending address some of the concerns that the objector has raised? I think Penny has raised.
Again, through you, Chair, Standard B17 allows for certain building height on the boundary before requiring a setback as the building rises up. So the officer's report has assessed the eastern interface where interfaces with 6 McKillop Street in a lot of detail. There's 2 very small non-compliances. We're talking about 41 centimetres and 14 centimetres at the first floor, and where there are non-compliances at the second floor, these relate to the mechanics at 736 Heidelberg Road and not number 6 McKillop Street. So in terms of a variation from the rest code standards, we're talking about very, very small variations here.
Thank you. Any other questions at this stage? Councillor Gomez.
One more general question. Page 83, note 5. There was quite a lot of commentary on the sustainable design conditions. Page 83, note 5. Sorry. It's quite a long list of conditions you're putting onto the applicant for meeting the sustainable design requirements. Oh, sorry, yes, I didn't have the actual letters there, but so the question is, how do the conditions that you're proposing help the objector manage the interface to the building? Does the sustainable design requirements assist in some of the setback concerns the resident has?
Officers.
Through you, Chair. That condition speaks to improving the sustainability design of the townhouses itself. It's about making sure that there is appropriate ventilation, solar panels, as well as solar shading. It will not make any changes to the setbacks, and so therefore won't have any further changes to the neighbouring properties.
Thank you. Looking for Councillor Wade.
Sorry, just a quick one, and I hope you don't mind me just quickly foreshadowing your amendment so I don't have to do the annoying thing again. The bins, where are they currently proposed to be collected from?
Currently, the applicant is proposing private collection from the curbside on Heidelberg Road.
Do you want to move your amendment? Or, okay, Councillor Mackenzie, way forward. Have you got one?
Yes, so I have an alternative motion. It is mostly the officer recommendation. It has 2 minor changes. One is a sign to alert motorists of pedestrians, and the other is, although in the report it was about Heidelberg Road curbside collection. I speak to that when we talk to it.
So you're moving it. Is there a seconder? I'm quite happy to second. Deputy Mayor Mackenzie, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I will. So thank you, officers, for the work, and thank you, everybody who came to speak tonight. I also grew up in Elphington. It is a beautiful place to live, and on the south side of Elphington over the last decade, there's been a lot of uncertainty with the Elphington paper mill and a whole lot of reasons why development hasn't progressed there the way that I think we had originally thought that it would. That's been a lot to ask for people who have lived there their whole lives. I completely understand why every change, comes with a bit maybe more anxiety than it would otherwise. However, reducing this down to 3 townhouses, whilst I understand the ask, I don't think it would be a responsible move for the council to do. I think that that's a 25% cut. It's already quite below what could be there. I don't see us being able to argue our way out of it in VCAT. And so for those reasons, I'm not going to support that. The small changes that I've made, look, in the report, it does speak to an agreement that the Heidelberg Road curbside will be where the pickup is, but I just wanted to get that into the recommendation itself. The motion itself. And then for some increased cars and traffic, there's people who use Heidelberg Road quite a lot, and I just want to make sure that that there is some alerting to cars of pedestrians. They are the only 2 changes, and thank you, Mayor, for seconding this motion.
Thank you. In seconding the motion, I've got absolutely no doubt that what the objectors have said would be nicer for them and for residents, but that's not what this is about here. When you're on a jury in a criminal trial, or if you're a judge at a judge-run trial, it's not a question in your mind. You can't say to yourself, is the accused a nice person? Would I like to live next door to the accused? What you have to ask yourself is, has it been proved that the accused has broken the law in terms of what that person has been charged of? And when it comes to this matter, it is almost like you've got to look through it through a quasi-judicial way. It's not a question of what we'd like. It's a question of, does the application right here in front of us tonight, Tuesday night here at Richmond Town Hall, on its merits, is it in breach of the local and state planning scheme, of all the relevant legislation that we have to measure it against, or not? It's not a question of whether we would like to live in it, or whether we think it's potentially there could be a better solution or a better building or a worse building for that matter. It's whether or not it's legal to the planning laws that we have to work to. And in that sense, this is not a political meeting where you just sort of basically just vibe it and just say, oh, I support Israel or I support Palestine or whatever. Here it's quite specific. We're working to judicial legal law to a degree. So when we look at this application, Blind Freddie can tell you that, you know, it is legal. It meets the state and local planning scheme and all the other legislation the officers are working to. And if we were to knock it back and go to VCAT, we'd just get reamed and we'd be wasting ratepayers' money. So I've got no doubt if there were fewer apartments there, we could have beautiful green space and all the rest of it. But that's not what's on the table here. We have to decide tonight this particular application as it stands at the moment. And on that basis, I'm quite happy to support the Deputy Mayor's motion with the amendments that she's got up there in yellow. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? Okay, well then there's no right of reply on that basis. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Okay, that is passed unanimously. Officers, can you please, before you go, please let us know what happens from here on in.
Following tonight, officers will be issuing a notice of decision to grant a planning permit. Objectors have 28 days to appeal at VCAT should they not agree with the decision, and applicant has 60 days to appeal any conditions they don't agree with. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the last agenda item, which is 5.3, 68 to 70 Nicholson Street, Abbotsford. Councillors, I'm going to take, you've already take it as read that you've read the recommendation, the officers' report. We can ask questions to the officers later on. We're now going to hear from the applicant or representative of the applicant, David Klingberg. Welcome. You've got 5 minutes starting now.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. My name is David Klingberg from Smart Planning and Design, representing Central Holdings for a proposal at 68 to 70 Nicholson Street, Abbotsford. We've been engaged by our clients to obtain a planning permit for the change of use to a boxing gym, and we support the recommendation of the officers. In our view, the application should be supported by the committee for the following reasons. There's minimal impact on the existing parking infrastructure on Nicholson Street and surrounding streets. There's minimal increase in traffic and traffic-related noise on Nicholson Street and surrounding streets generated by this proposal, as public and active transport are encouraged by the proposal and the Yarra planning scheme. The peer-reviewed content and findings of the Marshall Day acoustic report demonstrates the proposal's compliance with the EPA noise protocol and the relevant planning provisions, and the proposal provides a net benefit to community and social and health outcomes. The proposal is also in accordance with the relevant provisions of the Yarra planning scheme. We acknowledge during the advertising period there were some objections, and a review of the objections, parking and traffic concerns were cited. The site is well connected by high quality public transport links provided by train, tram and bus, and these high quality links place the subject site within the Principal Public Transport Network, or PPTN. The subject site is also highly accessible via active transport, including walking and cycling. We submit that Nicholson Street and the surrounding streets experiences a high demand for on-street parking. However, it is our view that the subject site being within the PPTN and the provision of additional parking would not be appropriate, and furthermore be contrary to Council's local planning policies that seeks to discourage private vehicle use. The proposal provides 3 existing car parking spaces located at the front of the site. We're of the view that this would be sufficient to accommodate staff. Additionally, other similar uses provide a similar number of parking spaces. Based on the above, the provision of 3 parking spaces is sufficient. An increase in the provision of car parking would not provide a positive response to Council's local planning policies of reduced car use and encourage sustainable transport. Rather, the provision of additional parking would result in increased private vehicle use and in turn increased demand for parking and traffic noise in the local area. We acknowledge a number of objections provide concerns regarding potential noise impacts generated from the use. With regard to acoustic concerns, we rely on the findings and recommendations contained in Marshall Day Acoustics report titled Boxing Gymnasium Abbotsford, Town Planning Acoustic Assessment dated the 5th of February 2025. This report was prepared as part of our response to Council's request for further information issued on the 9th of January 2025. The report and its content were peer reviewed by SLR consultant on behalf of Council. SLR found the results to be satisfactory and demonstrates the proposal will meet the EPA noise protocol. In addition to the 12 objections received during advertising, the applicant also received 17 submissions in favour of the application. Many of these supporting submissions cited net community benefits of the proposal. Citing clause 19.02.3s, cultural facilities, the establishment of a new sport and recreational facilities is to be encouraged. Particularly new facilities are encouraged in areas that are well serviced by public transport. As demonstrated above, the subject site is well serviced by high quality and easily accessible public and active transport links. Further to this clause, the subject site and proposal is highly accessible via a number of sustainable transport methods. We highlight the local area is currently undergoing residential densification. This proposal will provide easily accessible public positive health and social outcomes for the local community in an area cited in submissions as being deficient. Finally, in our view, that this proposal provides a positive response and is compliant with the relevant provisions of the Yarra planning scheme.
30 seconds.
So, on behalf of our clients, is our view the recommendation of the council should be supported by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Taylor, are you here? Do you want to speak? Or Patera, if I pronounced your name right? Yep. Come to the front. Are you David? That's David. Oh, sorry, yeah. There's two. Oh, Taylor. Are you Taylor? You're not Taylor. No, you're Patera. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so we've got one missing, and you're Patera.
Yep.
Tamarua?
Yep, correct.
Welcome.
Thank you. Just a bit of background on what it is we're wanting to do. So good evening, Mr. Mayor and councillors. My name is Petra Tamarua, and I'm one of the co-founders of Unify Training Club, which is the gym we want to open. I'd like to begin by sincerely thanking you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Unify Training Club is a boutique boxing, strength and running facility founded on the values of discipline, inclusivity and community. I co-own the business alongside Leo and Taylor. We're all family men and providers, fathers and husbands who understand the importance of building something not only for ourselves but also for our families and the people we serve. While we don't live in the city of Yarra, much of our professional work has been based here in Abbotsford, and many of our clients are local residents. This project is about continuing that connection and contributing in a meaningful way to a community we've been fortunate to work alongside for many years. In recent months, we've received encouraging expressions of interest from people wanting to train with us. Just as importantly, a number of local businesses and schools have approached us about collaborating. For us, this demonstrates that Unify has the potential to be more than a gym. It can become a supportive partner in promoting health, well-being and stronger community connections in Abbotsford. Our hope is that Unify Training Club will be a positive addition to the neighbourhood, a place that strengthens community, supports well-being and creates opportunities to collaborate with those around us. As family men and small business owners, this project holds deep personal meaning for us. We are grateful for the consideration and we respectfully ask for the support in bringing this vision to life. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillors, have we got any questions to the officers, the applicant or Patera? No questions. I'm looking for a suggested way forward. Councillor Aston, can you just tell us what it is? And don't speak to it yet, just tell us what it is.
I'll move the officer's report.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Harrison. On that basis, you can speak to the officer recommendation now.
I live right near Tribute Boxing, and so when I was reading the objections for this, I was thinking, but my own experience told me that when boxing gyms are well operated, they actually are a really great part of the community. I know that, when the roller doors are down, the noise is low. I know that, the people who come to attend the gym are there as part of a community. They're all mates. They get really involved and they're really respectful when they leave. I do understand residents' concerns around traffic, parking, those kinds of things. I don't think we can expect that no one is ever going to drive to the gym, because they do. I see it at Tribute now, but that's user choice, and people will need to find parking in very contested spaces in Abbotsford as it is. I really do commend your bravery and your courage in opening yet another gym in Richmond. You've got Anytime Fitness opening further down the road in Nicholson Street, and you've got the CrossFit gym right around the corner in Craftworks. But they are all different offerings, and it sounds as if you are really leveraging the community that you've already built. So I think it's a wonderful addition to Nicholson Street and to the local residents. I would just say, please make sure that you build good connections with your residential neighbours. Please make sure you stick to the conditions around the noise, the bikes, the cars, all those kinds of things. We typically say this to any business that's seeking to open or to do something that does have a lot of potential noise complaints, just to say, the conditions are there, please abide by them, but otherwise I wish you the best of luck.
Councillor Harrison.
I won't say much other than say I'm happy to support something that's supporting the community to be active and involved in the community, so that's it. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Gomez.
Just quickly to reiterate Councillor Aston's views, I go to Anytime Fitness Gym in North Fitzroy, and they have a great connection to the local community. So many issues that may have come up are dealt with through direct communication. I think the officers have done a great job to try and find a way to minimise the noise concerns, especially the potential 6 a.m. start. So I'm satisfied by that, and I wish you all the best. I think it's a good addition to the area.
Anyone else? Councillor Wade.
Just very briefly to say to any residents or to the gym themselves, we do have ways of changing parking requirements on the street. So if it does become problematic or anything like that, you can ask for permit parking on the street, you can ask for a change in conditions, and so just reach out to any of us and we can send you details about how to do that.
Anyone else? No. Would you like to exercise your right of reply? Okay, all those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. That is passed unanimously. Congratulations. On that, sorry, just officers, can you just tell us what happens from here on in, please?
Officers will issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit. Objectors have 28 days in which to appeal at VCAT.
Thank you. And on that basis, at 7:23 p.m, I'll close the meeting. Thank you all for coming.